Addressing South Africa's skills crisis is at the heart of any economic and developmental plan aimed at addressing the country's triple challenges of unemployment, poverty and inequality. Joining me to discuss just how government plans to do this is Dr. Nzimande, South Africa's Minister for Higher Education and Training. Minister, thank you so much for joining us. When you unveiled your skills plan, you said that the current levels of skills is not where it's at. How does this plan aim to do what previous plans couldn't do?
I think at the heart of what we are wanting to do is that we need to create what we call an integrated, flexible, responsive post-school education and training system in the first instance. What do we mean by that? We mean that we need to create a system that will cater for all those who have finished school or are out of school or have never been to school. And in order to do that, some of the key features of that system, if we are to respond effectively, must include, for instance, a very close relationship between what people have done at school, irrespective of the level they leave, and what is offered in the post-school system in the form of specific programs and skills development initiatives. But also it must be able to respond to people who have acquired experience, recognition of prior learning. Our system must be able to pick that up and be able to recognize that. But more than anything else also is that our post-school institutions, which will be universities, colleges, including FET colleges, agricultural colleges, there must be a relationship between what is done in one part of the system and the rest. For example, we must make sure that if you have done an engineering 3-year program at a college and you want to proceed to university to do an engineering degree, that must be recognized. We're not having that now. If you're asking me what was not there before, which we want to create, that articulation, as we call it, the relationship, was not there. That is very, very critical. But also, if you want to create an effective post-school education and training system, at the heart of it must be what we call vocational education, which simply means that we must have education that also relates to the needs of the labor market. And critically, therefore, if you want to have a vocational system, there must be a close relationship, not just amongst institutions in the post-school sector, but a relationship between those institutions and the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Now, talking about linking skills development to career paths and career development and promoting sustainable employment and in-work progression, how do you bring business on board? They are obviously a critical component if you're talking about on-the-job training.
That's exactly where I was getting into. In fact, to put it provocatively, Karima, I've always said to business, because they come and complain to me and say, but we are not giving us the right quality of graduates, whether from college or university. I say, well, as government, we are putting in a lot of effort, for instance, in improving quality. Mm-hmm. For example, into our further education and training colleges. But then I challenge them and say, in any case, as government, we can only do this so much. The quality of our education system is also as good as your commitment as business to open your workplaces for learnerships, internships, and apprenticeships, because all successful vocational education and training systems, post-school, have got to have provision for workplace exposure, either while someone is studying at college or at university, or immediately thereafter. We cannot be able to address that unless employers are able to open their workplaces as spaces for training. That's why our primary slogan in our department is every workplace must be a training space, wherever there are people working. Mm-hmm. Public or private, we must be having learnerships, internships, and apprenticeships in particular for artisans, because that is where we've got the biggest shortage in this country, is mid-level skills.
Let me come in there on the question of getting more artisans into the economy. Now, state-owned enterprises are obviously key. Now, we know prior to 1994, we did have what was commonly referred to as the API system. You know, people got on-the-job training. It was linked to their school or their certificate of some sort. All of that changed when the democratic breakthrough came. You've now revised the plan. Talk to us about what is in your skills plan that speaks specifically to artisan training, and how are you going to bring state-owned enterprises on board?
Firstly, by the way, the formation of our department out of splitting the former Department of Education into basic and higher education and training by the President was, amongst others, informed by this, that you need a dedicated department that's going to focus on post-school linked to the workplace. Mm-hmm. And the mandate that the President also said then is giving me is produce enough artisans for this economy. And what we have done so far in that regard, apart from the issue which I've spoken about, that, well, I might as well just say this. We've signed a National Skills Accord with business, labor and government in our social partners forum called NEDLEC in South Africa, precisely for placement of FET college graduates, universities of technology, which are your former technicons, those who require learnerships so that they can be able to complete their qualifications. That's the first thing that we have done, that National Skills Accord. So already there is an understanding. But the second thing that we have done is that, as you say, after 1994, we somehow lost this link between education and training. We are reinstating it now by actually ensuring that artisan training is standardized. Because as a result of the fact that we de-emphasized, at the moment there are more than 100 artisan qualifications in our country. That's totally abnormal. In other words, what it means is that some of these artisan training are fly-by-night. So we are standardizing that now, and we've established what we call a national artisan moderating body for minimum standards, so that whoever says is training artisans must be accredited by government and must actually meet certain basic minimum standards. So in short, the two things is placement, because you can't produce an artisan without workplace experience. Secondly, is minimum standards, mm-hmm. so that we are able to know that as a country, if we say you are an artisan, you must have gone through these minimum levels of training, both theoretically as well as in the workplace.
Now, you have become responsible for the CETAs, and they are at the heart of this skills process. But let's face it, Minister, CETAs have had a bad rap in South Africa. They haven't had the best of track records. You have come in and said things cannot go on in the same way. CETAs must change and must prove that they can be vehicles through which skills development can happen. You've appointed the National Secretary for the National Health and Allied Workers Union, Fikile Majola, to head up that process. How far is that process, and are you satisfied that CETAs are now in a position to do what they couldn't do previously?
I'm very pleased that the task team headed by Mr. Majola reported to me 3 weeks ago. They've completed their work.
What have they found?
Come out with are very important things. First of all, it confirms what I was suspicious of, which led me to appoint this team, that a lot of money that has gone through the CETAs has been used for short courses and not towards occupational programs. Mm-hmm. Secondly, it's also finding out that a lot of this money has gone into private providers of training and not much has gone to public institutions. Remember, Karima, there is no country in the world, even today, which built an effective education and training system through the private sector. Mm-hmm. It's always been public. Even the United States has a very vibrant public community college system, which actually does that. And so what this task team then is also saying to me is that we had allowed the SETAs to operate as private entities, yet they are public institutions, which are tripartite in nature. They involve government, labor, and business. But in the past, they've been running as if they were just labor and business. That is why some of the changes we have introduced is to say, I appoint the chairpersons, so that government becomes effectively a partner. Before, you would get unions and employers just coming together, reaching an agreement, this person is going to be a chairperson, and accounting only to themselves and not accounting to government, since the levies are public funds.
How has the change in accounting gone down with the SETA boards? Because I know that some individual SETAs were not happy with the changes that you had initiated. Is there stability now? Is there an acceptance that this is a better way of doing things?
There is stability. There were some pockets of resistance. Fortunately, the majority of the SETAs, even some of those who were not very sure of where we were going, accepted the need and necessity for change, which helped to isolate that small grouping which was taking me to court and trying to resist. We are now all agreed that SETAs have got to operate differently. I'm very happy to say that at least there is general commitment. That commitment is very important to start this journey of transforming these institutions. Let me give you an idea what we're talking about, by the way. The SETA started operating in year 2000. Between the year 2000 and 2011, in 11 years, they had going through their hands 57 billion rands.
And still we don't have the required skills.
7 billion rands. And there's very little to account for that. There is an acceptance of that. So that's the road now we still have got to travel, because as a country, I want to say, many of my colleagues, ministers from other countries say, we envy you for one thing, we have got levies, we don't have. Now, the issue is, how do we spend these levies such that we can make a difference? I want to say here, without fear of contradiction, if we use this money correctly, we do have enough money to begin to produce the skills we want as a country.
You have set an ambitious target around a certain amount of artisans. I think it's 10,000 yearly that you want to produce. How realistic, Minister, is that target?
I'm very pleased to say, by the way, that we have exceeded that target in 2011, 2012.
So
in fact,
doable.
We are raising, it's doable. In fact, we are raising it to beyond the target we had set with the President, to the target set in our economic policy of the New Growth Path, which says by 2015 we should be aiming to be producing about 40,000 artisans per annum. Mm-hmm. There's a steep order, but we think that we can be able to move much closer to that, but certainly beyond the targets that we've set ourselves. And I must say that what is making a difference in particular is the cooperation of some of the state-owned enterprises, which means, in terms of your earlier comment,
who's come on board?
Eskom. In particular, we are really very pleased.
Do we have numbers, Minister? How many trainees are we churning out at Eskom?
Eskom is close to 10,000 at the moment. Of course, not all of them artisans, mostly artisans, but others being skilled occupations in other areas, but close on to 10,000 from Eskom. And as a matter of fact, I was talking this week to the Minister of Public Enterprises, who is saying Transnet is coming on board.
Okay, Minister, we have to leave it there for now. We're taking a short break, but when we return, we continue our conversation with the Minister for Higher Education and Training, Dr. Nzimande.